This is Shaniqua, and yes, it is. That's why we got the wine. We're talking about some heavy stuff today.
Yes, we had to add the libation. So, if you remember from episode 1, we were talking about some things that we have in common, right? And one of the biggest things I think that's important that draws us together is parenthood, because we're all mothers. So we thought this episode we would bring it back, the topic, circle around it, and talk about parenting. Like, how did we learn to parent? What things did we take from our parents, and what things were we like, nah, that's not how I want to do this thing. So I guess the first question I'll ask is, for your parent, what kind of parenting style did you all grow up with, and was it impactful to who you are now?
Very deep question.
Do you see?
um, I grew up in a, my mother wasn't really there, you know. I think I touched on this in episode 1. We didn't really get too much in detail, but I think that she was living her life, and to the point that we were on the back burner, right? And so I think my younger years, I was chasing after her, right? And so she just didn't have it to give. I guess I get that now. You know, I'm writing a book, Memoir of a Burdened Child. Be out this year.
Go on and mark it.
It'll be out this year. But it talks about that, pretty much me chasing her. And I came to realize, like, okay, you know what? This is not it. My father was the same way. So I pretty much grew up, you know, without no guidance, without them to really lead me, because we were in surviving. Like, surviving. What are we going to eat today? Where are we going to stay today? You know, things like that. So that's kind of how I grew up. And the style that, you know, they gave.
So no style, just freestyling it now.
Just freestyling.
I get it. No, I can. That really resonates with me. I think for me, similar. And I've talked to my mom about this. Like, I didn't really grow up with my mom, and I think at first I was one of those things where I thought about it like, oh, you know, she just didn't want to be bothered, stuff like that. But as a parent myself, like, we go through so much mentally, right? It's just can be so much, and I think, you know, you have people who kind of just push through and do what they need to do with their kids, and the other ones just like, I can't do it. And I do feel like that's kind of the road my mom went. Like, I just can't do it. So I didn't have my mom growing up. I was really in and out of my life. Again, like I said before, I'm like mama's baby, daddy's maybe. So I didn't really have my dad or his like family around because they didn't know. And you know, as I got older, like it's like it is what it is. So like I kind of always looked at it like I kind of grew up with like, you know, it takes a village to raise a child. So like, let's give her bare necessities, let's feed her and keep her clothed and some shelter. And like, so that's kind of how I thought parenting was. Just like, you just feed them, clothe them, make sure they're still breathing. Like, there was no other stuff a part of that. So like, I think parenting style for me was just like keep the person alive and see what happens. Everything else is like bonus points. So I didn't really grow up with a parenting style to kind of like figure out how I should parent, because like I just always felt like I was just put out there. I was born and like here we are. So there was like none of that other stuff. So same here, no parenting style for me. So
it's freestyles all across the board. Okay, so
right.
Well, I did great. No, I'm just joking. No, so my mom was with my dad for however long. They split though when I was like young, but then my stepdad came in, and so then that's how we moved to the U.S. But my mom was a single mom for a while, and then with, you know, when my stepdad came in, my biological dad became like, oh, and let me disclaim this, I love both of my parents very much, so anything I say is not an attack on them. But so my dad became like a summertime dad, so I didn't have a super close relationship with him until I became an adult and had my own child. But my mom was, you know, the everything, right? Disciplinarian, the cook. You know, she had to do it on her own. And then when my stepdad came in, he helped relieve those tasks for her. And it was funny is like when I talked to my siblings about our childhood, everybody has a different perspective. Like, I'm like, were we raised in the same household? Because
With different parents.
yeah.
Different phases of life that they're in.
Exactly. And I was like, I think my mom did a dope job. But then, like, you talk to whatever, one of my siblings, and they have a different perspective. So for me, there were some gems that I picked up from her, but also some things I was like, I kind of want to do that different. And one of the main things, which can take us into another discussion, is saying like I love you.
Yeah.
And my grandmother, so her mom, so on that side, her mom is Native American, and so they're very like culturally stoic, right? Like culturally they don't say that, but also on the Caribbean side, I didn't get it from my dad either. So when I tell you, me and my son say I love you about 3, 4, 5, anytime we hang up, like it's just I love you, like, and he's known that from birth. And so I notice when he says it to my dad or my brother, one of my brothers, it's like awkward for them.
Yeah.
But he'll still say it. He's just like, all right, uncle, love you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's normal for him because that's how I, brought him up. So that's one of the things that I do different from my parents is like inserting that. So there's more, but I'll let you guys.
Yeah. No, I can totally get that, especially with the I love you. And I will say this, like, even with having the absence of, like, a biological mother and father, I will say, like, the family that did step up. When you brought up, like, your stepfather, like, I did have an amazing stepdad before he passed away. I did have, like, my grandma. And I think when I think about parents, I know that I think about it, like, even when I do trips and stuff for my kids, a lot of that comes from my aunt. Like, my aunt was married, like, she had her kids, and, like, the way she raised her kids was like, oh, that's how a family is supposed to be, and then, like, me growing up and, like, her making us a part of it, it's always felt like, oh, this is what I want, right? Like, if I want the husband, the kids, the trips, like, oh, people plan trips, people go places, what? So it's, like, things like that. So that's where I, like, kind of get where, like, my parenting idea comes from. But when you brought up the love thing, it's funny because I'm the same way with my kids. Like, I'm always like, I love you, I love you, I love you beautiful, I love you handsome, like, just letting them know, like, how amazing they are, but also that love. And, like, my mom, when she came to Texas when I first moved out here, she was like, your kids say I love you, like, all the time, like, even to her. And it was like, but it's also like how she was raised. Like, she wasn't used to, like, her mom saying I love you. Yeah. So, like, it's like, they pass that down. It's just like, where did we pick that up then from? Like, that's what we're used to seeing. Like, where did we get to the fact, like, okay, we're going to tell our kids, like, we love them. So
I agree on that. And I think for me, it was the first time my mom said I love you. And I was like, ooh, that felt weird. And I would never forget that feeling. Like, I said I love you too. But it just felt foreign. It didn't feel like, okay. So when I had my son, it was like I overly poured into him. I kissed him. I made sure I was very affectionate with him. I told him I love him. And he's the same way. And sometimes it'd be 3,782 times a day that he would tell it to me. But it's just like he's used to it. That's how it is for him. And the same with my daughter. She said the same every time I leave out the door, like, drive safe, be safe, love you. Every time we hang up, it's always, I love you. And it's because that's what's natural for them. It's natural for me to hug on them. It's natural for them, to kiss on them. It's not nothing that it's foreign to them because I remember how it felt the first time she ever said it to me.
Yeah.
And so I knew I did not want my kids to feel that. They need to know that I love them, not just verbally, but also hugging them. Because, like, even that, like, okay, you never hugged me before. Yeah. That's a little awkward,
But it goes back to, too, because I think you said it, I don't know if it was episode 2 or episode 1, but, like, you can't, like, do what you don't know, because I literally had the conversation with each of my parents and told them that. And now my mom, every time we hang up, it's like, I love you. And it doesn't feel foreign anymore, right? Because I told him, I'm like, do you know you don't say it? And she didn't even realize it. And then my dad, again, like, with his culture. So now he's still, like, getting used to it, but he'd be like, all right, love you, bye. Like, it's like a quick, like,
gotta get it out.
Yeah. So, and I even talked to him about, right. And so I even talked to him about, like, how I felt about him being, like, a summertime dad and a weekend dad. And I was like, and I need you to have that relationship with my son, like your grandson. And so he has stepped up more, but it's still, like, when you tell them, it's almost like you expected them to know that. And that's what I tell my siblings or even my clients for therapy, like, do they know that they didn't parent you how you wanted to be parented, or do they know that they impacted you in this way? So it's also giving them grace, right, for not doing what they didn't have the knowledge to do. And so I didn't really know my dad's side. Well, I didn't, at the time, I didn't know my dad's parents, but, like, my mom's, like, parents I grew up with. And so I could tell, like, where she got it from, just, again, that Native American culture. And, she had 8 siblings, so I could imagine what it was like to parent 8 children. you know. But yeah, so I think that was one of the important things, the I love yous. The other one was that I didn't want. So I had this stigma about, before I had kids, right? A stigma about single mothers, right? Especially being a black woman and being a single mother.
Okay, airplane.
Keep going. Okay. So being a single mother and being black, so that was always something I'm like, okay, I'm never going to be that. Like, and I judge those women, right? Or women that had multiple baby daddies, baby fathers. And so when I became, and I hate to use that word because I'm not a single mother. I have such an amazing village. I've never ever felt like a single mother. But when that became what I identified as, I was super shameful of myself, and so then I stayed in a relationship longer than I had to make it work, so I didn't become that stereotype. And it was just the worst thing ever to be in that season and like be broken and trying to also prove to everyone that like I'm not this stereotype. So when we were growing up, she was in a shelter for a little bit with us, and then got out of it. But that was one of the things that I didn't want to be. So mm-hmm.
I think for me, I can resonate with that too. Mm-hmm. Well, in some ways, I think that I didn't grow up with a lot of visuals of what marriage looked like or people being married. Mm-hmm. So I never had that. I guess I never had that hope for myself. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because, again, I was still stuck in survival mode. I grew up a different type of way. I grew up like, okay, I still remember what it's like to be hungry. And I'm not talking about, hey, we just skipped a meal. I'm talking about days, right? Mm-hmm. So my focus wasn't about, hey, I'm going to get with this man and we're going to get married and we're going to build a family. I didn't know what that is. And honestly, I might still struggle with that a little bit, mm-hmm. of what it's like to come in partnership with someone and to raise a family. Mm-hmm. So when I thought about children, I don't even know if I thought about children, like as in, hey, I'm going to build a family. Yeah. I know what to do to not have kids. Did I do it? No. I got pregnant at 20. And it was in a situation, in a relationship that wasn't feeding me. And so I knew for a fact that he won't have that. I didn't realize that I was also passing that down to my son. But the difference is I knew I was going to be there. Yeah. I knew that he was going to have a house. He was going to have a room. He was going to have a bed. He was going to have food. He would never know what it's like to have to hustle, to eat at such a young age. He would never know what it's like to be evicted because he has a mother that's going to be there for him. And I get that's resonate with you. Like, hey, feed him, clothe him. But what I didn't realize in doing that, and I'm trying to heal my younger self through that I couldn't see him. And he was struggling through some things. My son had he was the typical hyper kid that went to school that people were like, okay, medicate him. Yeah. I didn't have any guidance on that. I knew it didn't feel right, but everybody's telling me what to do. Like, oh, take him. Something's wrong with him. Something's wrong with him. Something wrong. He can't do this. He can't do that. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? So I internalized that. He's getting in trouble, but he's such a smart kid. Like, super smart kid. He was reading that too. He was doing all these amazing things, but his behavior wasn't conducive with his education. So something's wrong with him. And it's like, whoop him, do this, do that. And it didn't really feel right to me, but I was so lost that I was listening to what everybody was saying, because my main goal was make sure this kid can eat, make sure he had his bed. And once I satisfied that, I'm like, why are you still acting out? Like, I'm doing everything. And it took me to go into therapy to say that you were trying to heal yourself, that you could not see what he was going through. And that was hard.
Therapy nuggets.
That was hard. It was realization to me. I had to take a step back like, she right. I'm not seeing my son struggle. Like, he's struggling in school. I never did that. So how do I help him with that? And everybody I called on, and when I'm glad y'all had a village, but I did not have a village when it came to him. Mm-hmm. I reached out to organizations. I reached out to so many people because I'm like, I don't know what else to do. Mm-hmm. I don't know what else to do. I'm like, I'm getting a call every single day from the school to the point when the number come up on my phone, I'm having a anxiety attack. Yeah. That's how much they call me. Like, you need to come get this boy. And I don't know what to do. Yeah. And I had no guidance. But I told him, like, I'll be there. That's all I could do. And I called Neek. Like, your godson is acting up again, you know?
Girl, you embody that. You don't look like what you've been through. I'm sitting
that
here like,
part.
What?
Right.
You went hungry for days. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. No, and it's crazy you all said that because like when you all kind of talk about like because even with the village thing, I will say making sure our kids have a safe space to talk about anything is so important because like that's like I had my oldest at 16, right? He's about to be 21. And I always say the reason I had him at 16 is because I didn't have a safe space. Like to be able to say, not like, you're not supposed to have sex as a teenager, but like if you know these things are happening, you go to someone and say, hey, I think I may want to be on birth control. The first reaction would be to beat you. And that was the first reaction. Like, oh, birth control, you want to talk about this. And for this person not to even be your parent, but is in charge of raising you and beating you because you're asking, what you going to do? I ain't going to bring it up no more. Ain't going to be able to stop having sex. I just know this is not a safe space because then the guy I'm messing with is a safe space. His house becomes a sanctuary because they don't have violence. They're accepting me. They're loving me. And so, with all that coming into play, then my son happens, right? And I think when we talk about like a village raising a child, it wasn't my village, it wasn't my family. Like I will always give my oldest son's dad like all the kudos because if it wasn't for him and his family, I probably wouldn't have graduated high school. I probably wouldn't have went to college. Like it's really important just to make sure your kids have a safe space. And I think that's the biggest thing that I changed from like how I was parenting versus how I parent now is like you can talk to me about anything. Like in the back of my mind, like yeah, my daughter talking about she got a boyfriend. I'm just like why, but I'm not gonna say why. I'm probably gonna text y'all like oh my gosh, like
Wait, that happened
this
already?
girl, this muscle head little boy. But we'll talk about that another time. I'm just like put on right, put on the smile. Guess we're all going to the movies. And it's like, but that's the space
We're gonna have some conversations tonight. Okay.
Oh Lord. But that's a space you want to create because you want to make sure that they have that safe connection where they know that. But then also I think that's why I go into so much to like beautiful, handsome, because you also want to make sure they know their worth. And I think that's the other part, not so much just also the safe space, but like I didn't know my worth. Like if no one's pouring into you to tell you like you're beautiful, you're smart, you're intelligent, like the first sign or first smell of that, you're gonna run to that. So like I always tell people it's crazy because like my son's father was actually my bully first, but like he showed me attention. I know it's so weird, right? But he showed me attention and we were down the street from each other, so it's like I know. But that was the attention, that was more attention I was getting, right? So it led to something else. So it's like it's so important just to pour into your kids to let, even if you don't know what that feels like, even if it's uncomfortable for you, like you said, like go to therapy, figure out your own stuff, but like don't put that on your kids. And I think a lot of times, like I've talked to my mom, like no one told her that, like no one told her she was beautiful, no one told her this, that, and the third. She didn't hear that from my grandma, so of course she's gonna run to me. Like she had my sister at 14, so it's like how do you break those generational curses? And like even though John's about to be 21 and no kids, stuff like that, I don't think my anxiety, and y'all could probably talk more about this, doesn't come from the boy. It's come from like, I got a little girl, you know what I mean? I think that's where a lot of my anxiety, but we got to treat the boys and girls the same, right? Like we can't just like single out. But I think with John, I was like, I was never worried about that. Like I didn't think about it as much as I think about Dream. It's just like, I really want to lock you in the tower, but I can't do that. So here we are. So I'm just like, I'm working through those emotions as a parent, like, especially with the little girl, just like, okay, she's not me. I'm not my mom. We're going to like work through this so we won't have like repeated situations. So yes, I get it with like the tribes and everything, but I think the biggest thing that I'm learning is just like, I just want to protect on a different level, right? I want to be the one that protects my children in a healthy way. And when you're talking about like the beating and stuff like that, one thing that I think everybody probably would get annoyed with me about in the past was like, I don't whip my kids. I don't whip John. I never whipped John. Well, no, I take that back. I learned my mistakes from John, right? I learned, but I don't. Right. Yeah, I learned my mistakes from John, but Dream and EJ, no, I don't. Like we have conversations. Like Dream, you have to write a paper, or we do like other things, but like put my hand, I would never ever, just because of the abuse that I went through, I would never do that. Like that's not healthy. And like I think we're so programmed to think like beat them, beat them, beat them. That doesn't help anything.